Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Guardians of Liberty. I am your host, Nathan Parada, joined by, as always, Zach Taylor, former Nebraska football player. So, how you doing, Zach?
A former athletic marvel that gained another person in weight? Yeah.
I mean, most athletes do that when they stop being athletes. So don't feel bad about it.
I guess.
I'm not judging. You're the one judging here.
So that's also a thing in the military is like half the guys that get out end up like me because you're used to that every day working out and then being able to eat mostly what you want because you're working out every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get out and you're like, I'm going to eat like this, but I'm not going to do the working out every day part. It's like half the guys that get out of the military.
It does
they
happen.
Either stay like you or they end up like me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, so the Warmongers are at it again. Big shock. Apparently, this is breaking news just happened today. Another Syrian, another chemical attack, this time on the Syrian city of Doma, which is a rebel-held city in Syria. Now, this just happened. It just happened today. And people are already jumping to conclusions claiming that it was the Assad regime who did this. Now, you'll remember a few weeks ago when I did one of my solo episodes, I read you an article that quoted General Mattis as saying that there was no evidence to suggest that the last chemical attack was actually done by Assad. And if you will all remember, once that attack happened, the mainstream media and the politicians in Washington went absolutely crazy trying to, went absolutely crazy trying to blame Assad, claiming that he was the one that did it and that there was no other viewpoint was allowed. Mm-hmm. Now, remember that very day, Ron Paul came out in his show and said, look, there's no evidence that Assad did this.
There's also no logical reason for Assad to do that.
Exactly.
He's winning. When you're winning, you don't do things that are going to bring other superpowers against you. That's stupid. It's much more likely that it's a false flag attack by some of the rebel groups trying to draw the U.S. into the war.
Yeah, and that's essentially the claim Ron Paul was making during the attack that happened last year. And it made perfect sense from that perspective. Because, yeah, there was no reason for him to do that. He had the rebels on the rope. ISIS was on the way down. He had Russia's support. One of the only things that could actually bring about his defeat would be an American intervention in Syria, which is what a chemical weapons attack is likely to provoke.
Yeah.
So I want to read to you Donald Trump's tweet about this attack that happened just today. He said, I'm not going to do it in the Trump voice because the longer I do a Trump voice, the more stupid I feel. He said, many dead, including women and children, in mindless chemical, all caps, attack in Syria. Area of atrocities is in lockdown and encircled by Syrian army, making it completely inaccessible to the outside world. President Putin, Russia, and Iran are responsible for backing Animal Assad. Big price to pay. Open area immediately for medical help and verification. Another humanitarian disaster for no reason whatsoever. Sick. So I think it's safe to say that the warmongers have officially gotten to Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And the candidate who was running on a more hands-off approach to foreign policy is gone.
I'd just like to remind everyone that our candidate did not know where Aleppo was, and he certainly wouldn't be getting involved in Doma. Duma?
Doma. It's D-O-U-M-A.
Duma.
So
whatever.
I'm sure there's pronunciation we're getting
wrong.
We're
kind of making fun here, but that's obviously very terrible for the people that live in that city. If there's any left at this point.
It was a large city.
Most of these cities are bombed out.
The casualties are around 40 people from this recent attack.
So it's a large city and a chemical attack only killed 40 people, which, granted, 40 people is terrible. But that means that this is another one of those cities that's pretty much like a ghost town.
Well, see, what I've been watching a lot of the mainstream media's coverage of this since news came out. And some people are suggesting that this was a targeted attack on a hospital, which again makes no sense from a military perspective, but makes 100% sense from a false flag perspective. If you want to bring a Western power into the war to oust Assad, what better way to do this than to gas a hospital?
An orphanage is the only way you can get more shock. But I mean, most of these hospitals are full of kids anyway. So
I mean, I don't know if that's true. That this is just something that I was heard being reported on. I believe it was CNN.
Oh, that's probably not true.
It probably isn't true. But this is what CNN was reporting. This was a targeted chemical attack, and they've been having politicians on all day, asking them whether or not we need a military
I bet it was
intervention.
immediately John McCain and Lindsey Graham.
I did see Lindsey Graham on there. Mr. Lindsey Graham, our favorite effeminate politician who has never seen a war he doesn't want to get involved in, has never seen a country he doesn't want to bomb.
So now not only are we fighting a trade war with China, we are going to fight a real war with Russia and maybe China.
So here's the thing about it. This is what a lot of these, the more interventionists, shall we say, politicians have been saying, is that this is done because Assad feels emboldened by Trump saying that we might pull out of Syria soon, which he did. He said that we might be pulling out of Syria sometime in the near future, and they're saying that this emboldens Assad, and now he feels like he can do this and suffer no consequences. Whereas I take kind of the opposite perspective on this. You know what I mean? This isn't Assad feeling emboldened and now thinking he can do whatever he wants. This is the Syrian opposition knowing that their window of opportunity of getting America involved in the war might go away. And the best way
it's so obvious. Like, what's the thing when you to find the answer, you need to discount all the things that are highly unlikely and arrive at the thing that is possible, or something like that. Like, this is an obvious, like, sure, it's possible that Assad's like, screw it, I'm going to gas someone. But that doesn't make any sense. Are people just dumb enough that they're going to listen to Trump, of all people, and our media, who's even less trusted, and listen to these people and be like, oh, yeah, this is totally how this happened?
This is the same mainstream media, let's keep in mind, that was cheerleading the war in Iraq, that was cheerleading Obama's intervention in Libya, and was cheerleading the potential of intervention in Syria last year. This is not a mainstream media that is critical of warmongering, that is critical of interventionism. This is a mainstream media that openly cheerleads it. And then months later, when General Matters comes out and says there's no evidence that Assad committed the chemical attack, buried. You would think that would be huge news. You would think that would be all over the mainstream media. Nope. When it comes out months later that they were completely wrong, then that gets almost zero coverage because it doesn't fit their narrative. And I remember libertarians like me and you and Thomas Macy and Ron Paul were dragged through the mud last year when this chemical weapons attack occurred, and we didn't support military intervention.
Keep going. I'm ordering food.
I remember that Thomas Macy, he was on, I believe it was CNN, and he was asked, what would you say to a Syrian child who just wants you to come in and save her from Assad's atrocities? And first of all, there's no proof that this was an Assad atrocity. There's no proof of that whatsoever. There never was. And second of all, why don't you point towards what the interventions American had in Libya and Iraq did?
Oh, yeah, there's still slave markets in Libya. That's still happening. Way to go, Clinton.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, okay, gas attacks are bad. Slave markets are worse.
And it's not like that's the only horrible thing going on in Libya.
Oh,
Libya
no,
is a failed state.
Yeah.
It is awful there.
And
it's all thanks to our intervention. Good job, Obama. And Hillary.
I don't like. It's frustrating how obvious this is. And it's frustrating how obvious what our government is trying to do is. And people are just like, doesn't affect me. You're an asshole. People are dying all over the world because we are getting involved in things that we have no business being in. Well, they don't look like you. They don't speak our language. They're not our tribes, so they don't matter.
They're all terrorists, Zach. It doesn't matter if a few 100,000 of them die.
I get annoyed when the left starts calling everyone racist because it's dumb. But in this case, this is some major tribalism BS. Because if this was Switzerland, we would be more pissed off. That's all I'm saying. Like that is true. If I can't. This is so frustrating.
So I think it'd be very interesting in the days that follow to see what Donald Trump does. I have no doubt that he's going to give in to the warmongers again. Last time he launched a missile strike against a Syrian air base. Thankfully, that didn't result in any further military intervention.
Which it really should have, because there were Russians on that base.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we have troops.
We've been killing Russians in Syria.
Yeah, we have
fairly consistently.
We have a few thousand troops in Syria right now. I mean, Donald Trump was talking about pulling them out, which, great. He never should have been there in the first place. Pull them out as soon as you can. That's probably not going to happen now. You're probably going to see. I've been seeing politicians call for the United States to obliterate the Syrian Air Force, obliterate their air bases.
Mm-hmm. Which we tried that already. Like,
we went after.
You know what's going to happen if we wipe out their Air Force.
I mean,
Russia's going to give them a few more.
This is what Hillary Clinton wanted. She wanted a no-fly zone over Russia, which included against Russian jets.
Syria.
What was I saying?
Russia.
Oh yeah, she wanted a no-fly zone in Syria.
I'm sure she would have liked to have tried that too.
This is just more warmongering on the part of our government and the mainstream media. Libertarians have to be principled and stand against this. I have serious doubts that President Assad was responsible for the attack last year, and that he is responsible for this attack.
Now, that is not us saying that Assad is anything less than an absolute piece of filth, because he is. It's not that he is not capable of doing what they're accusing him of. It's that he's too smart to do. To provoke us into a war. Yeah,
this is also not to say that he couldn't have done this. He very well might have, but I have serious doubts.
Yeah.
And I need to be presented with concrete, absolute proof that he did this before I take any of these calls for war seriously.
At least in this case, the preponderance of evidence. Because right now, it's like all the evidence points to not Assad.
Yeah, exactly. And usually when people bring up, oh, there's evidence against this, they're talking about some top secret evidence presented to a handful of congressmen in Washington. So no, evidence that the rest of us don't get to see. Evidence that we won't get to see until years after we've already bombed the crap out of this country and destroyed it.
Until hundreds and thousands more of our battle buddies have been put in the ground over a lie.
Exactly. I mean, if we get involved in Syria and a bigger war comes from what could be a lie, I'm sorry, but President Trump is going to be as worse in that case than Obama or President Bush if we did that. You know, I've been
Trump, last time I checked, he is bombing. He's doing drone strikes and bombing runs more than even Obama, which means we've escalated.
Well, yeah, he has. But the one thing that he hasn't done is invaded and occupied a country and committed regime change. Mm-hmm. You know, that's bad. All the drone war that we're fighting is bad. But regime change, the way Obama and Bush did,
again.
That's worse.